Why do some of the most intelligent people seem to suffer the most? They notice everything. The shifts in tone, the weight behind words, the quiet breakdown happening just beneath someone's smile. They can map out the consequences of a single choice 5 steps ahead. And yet, they freeze, they hesitate, they spiral. You'd think insight would make life easier, but sometimes the more clearly you see, the harder it becomes to move. Franz Kafka didn't admire intelligence for its own sake. He wrote about it like a wound, open, alert, impossible to numb. To him, knowledge wasn't liberation, it was a burden. A slow, grinding awareness that made comfort feel dishonest and simplicity feel false. This isn't just about intellect. It's about what's happening when the mind outpaces the heart, when understanding outgrows meaning, and it raises a deeper question. What happens when thinking becomes a trap? Welcome to Mantis Library, where we explore the tension between thought, behavior, and meaning, one idea at a time. The more intelligent the mind, the more it sees. Patterns in behavior, fault lines in logic, contradictions in meaning. At first, that seems like power, but for Kafka, it was something else entirely. His characters aren't heroes of insight. They're trapped inside it. They see too much, but can do nothing with what they see. In the trial, Joseph K. is pulled into a system he can't understand, let alone escape. Every step toward clarity leads to more confusion. Every answer generates new questions. That's the paradox. The sharper your perception, the more impossible life becomes to navigate. Too many possibilities, too many flaws, too many reasons not to act. Kafka wrote, "It is not necessary to accept everything as true. One must only accept it as necessary." In other words, the system doesn't need to make sense. You just have to live inside it. And for the intelligent mind, that's torture. Because the more you understand, the harder it becomes to believe. Belief starts to feel like self-deception. Meaning starts to feel like something borrowed. So instead of moving forward, you stop. Not out of weakness, but because you've seen too much to pretend it's simple. Kafka didn't frame this as drama. He framed it as reality. A world where logic loops back on itself, where awareness becomes a cage, and where intelligence doesn't lead to action, but to paralysis. So what happens when perception sharpens, but connection frays? Kafka's answer was silence. His characters live in cities full of people, yet they speak like they're trapped in a void. The more they observe, the less they're able to belong. It's not that they don't want connection, it's that they feel everything inside it. Every glance, every pause, every shift in tone. They don't just hear what's said, they process all the layers beneath it. That kind of awareness is exhausting. For the highly intelligent, social life isn't casual. It's analysis in real time. Reading micro-expressions, interpreting subtext, filtering implications. Every conversation becomes a chess game, played with invisible rules. And eventually, many choose retreat. Not because they dislike others, but because the effort to stay present outweighs the reward. Kafka captured this perfectly. His protagonists aren't rebels or loners by choice. They're swallowed by systems too large to change and too absurd to explain. That's the tragedy of insight. The deeper your understanding, the harder it becomes to feel understood. You begin to notice things others miss, and slowly that gap becomes distance. Not because you've moved away, but because no one else saw the path you did. Intelligence then becomes a kind of exile, a quiet one, not imposed from the outside, but chosen over time out of necessity. Kafka didn't just write about this, he lived it. A man of letters who barely published in his lifetime. A thinker surrounded by people, yet convinced no one truly heard him. And maybe that's the price of seeing clearly in a blurry world. You start to feel like a ghost in your own life, watching, thinking, analyzing, but never quite inside the scene. But isolation doesn't always begin outside. Sometimes it starts in the mind. Because when the world becomes too much to explain, the intelligent person turns inward, into thought, into theory, into loops that never close. Kafka understood this better than anyone. He wrote, "A cage went in search of a bird." A haunting image, because the cage isn't something external, it's internal, self-built, reinforced by logic, locked by clarity. This is the paradox of intelligence. The sharper your reasoning, the better you get at dismantling your own choices. You can see every angle of a decision, so you choose none. You anticipate every flaw, so you never commit. You talk yourself out of action, not because you're lazy, but because nothing feels solid enough to stand on. In this state, overthinking becomes self-sabotage. Not dramatic, not loud, just endless rehearsals for a play that never begins. You write drafts of conversations. You imagine outcomes. You simulate failure in such detail, it becomes safer than risking success. Kafka's characters embody this. They wander halls that shift, follow instructions that contradict, face trials with no crime, no sentence, no end. It's not madness. It's too much logic. And for some, that's the real trap. Not ignorance, but insight turned inward until it collapses on itself. Smart people don't get stuck because they lack answers. They get stuck because they see too many of them, and every one feels both true and insufficient. Eventually, thinking becomes not a tool, but a tomb. You don't trust your impulses. You second-guess your instincts. You need every move justified, explained, defended. But life isn't a thesis. It can't always be reasoned through. And when the need for certainty outruns the need for movement, you sit still. Kafka wasn't warning us about irrationality. He was warning us about the mind's power to trap itself, to build mazes so intricate even the builder can't find the exit. Because sometimes the smartest people aren't free, They're just better at describing the walls. But what happens when the mind escapes the maze, only to find there's nowhere worth going? Kafka's characters don't just struggle with decisions, they struggle with why any of it matters. Because once you've dismantled all the illusions, all the false comforts, all the easy answers, what's left? Kafka saw this clearly. For him, bureaucracy wasn't just about offices and papers. It was a symbol of the soul's endless search for meaning in a system that offers none. In the trial, Joseph K. seeks justice. In the castle, K. seeks recognition. In both, the more they seek, the more meaningless the answers become. Every hallway leads to another. Every explanation just complicates the question. That's what Kafka understood. The real torment of intelligence is not confusion, it's clarity without belief. Smart people don't get stuck because they don't know enough. They get stuck because they know too much and can't believe in any of it. They see the cracks in every system, the flaws in every philosophy, the contradictions in every claim to purpose. They ask, what's the point? And their mind gives them 1,000 options, all of them logically sound, none of them emotionally satisfying. Kafka wrote, "There are questions we could never get past, but which we also could never answer. It's the loop of awareness without anchoring, understanding without grounding, thinking that keeps circling back, not because it's wrong, but because nothing sticks." And that's the real weight of intellect. Not that you see too little, but that you see everything. And it all collapses under scrutiny. So, what do you trust? How do you move forward when belief feels like betrayal? When every purpose you hold disintegrates the moment you analyze it? That's Kafka's world. One where knowledge sharpens but never soothes. Where meaning is always a step beyond reach. Where the smarter you become, the lonelier your questions grow. And the only thing worse than not knowing the answer is knowing all of them and believing none. Kafka didn't write to solve problems. He wrote so we could feel them more honestly. His stories aren't guides, they're mirrors. They don't lead you out, they show you where you're stuck. And that's the point. Kafka wanted the reader to inhabit the very tension his characters lived inside. That unbearable space between awareness and helplessness, between seeing everything and changing nothing. That's why his writing feels claustrophobic. There's no resolution, no catharsis, just rooms inside of rooms, doors that open into questions and trials without verdicts. Because sometimes suffering isn't caused by a cruel world, it's caused by being too awake to ignore it. And this is what Kafka forces us to confront. The more intelligent the mind, the more difficult it becomes to lie to yourself. You can't pretend the world is just. You can't pretend your life has inherent structure. You can't pretend things make sense when they don't. So you either dull your awareness or carry it like a wound. Kafka chose the wound. He sharpened it into stories, not to uplift, but to witness. He once wrote, "There is infinite hope, but not for us." It's not despair, It's precision. Because Kafka didn't believe in comforting illusions. He believed in looking directly at the absurdity of life and resisting the urge to flinch. This was his warning, that the pursuit of clarity, if left ungrounded, can lead to collapse. That the mind, when trained to see everything, might lose the ability to hold on to anything. And yet, he kept writing, he kept noticing, he kept asking questions he knew had no answers. Not because he believed he would escape the trap, but because naming the trap mattered. That's the gift he left behind. Not instructions, not hope, but something harder and maybe more useful. The courage to stand inside the maze and admit that you're lost. If Kafka gave us the courage to admit we're lost, he also gave us a quiet blueprint for what to do next. Not escape, not illusion, but creation. Because even as Kafka described mazes with no exit, he wrote, and in writing, he built something else. A form, a frame, a mirror that held the chaos without being destroyed by it. This is what separates despair from transformation. Not the absence of suffering, but what you do with it. Kafka wrote, "A first sign of the beginning of understanding is the wish to die." It sounds grim, but it isn't a death wish. It's a signal that the mind has something too big to carry in its old form. That moment when the illusion cracks, when your thoughts no longer protect you, it's a threshold, and you have a choice. You can spiral, collapse into cynicism, endless loops, withdrawal, or you can shape what you've seen into something shareable. Kafka couldn't make sense of the world, but he gave shape to his questions. He turned confusion into fiction, anxiety into allegory, loneliness into language. Creation doesn't solve the paradox, but it gives us somewhere to live. That's the deeper message buried in Kafka's work. The same intelligence that isolates you can also connect you. The same awareness that leads to paralysis can lead to art. Because creation isn't about answers, it's about rendering experiences into form, so others can see what you saw and feel a little less alone. So maybe that's the way forward, not to silence the thinking mind, not to numb it, but to build with it, to take all the unbearable clarity and press it into something that holds shape. Kafka didn't escape the trap, but in writing it, he left us a door, not out of the maze, but deeper into it, with language as our only light. If you feel trapped by your thoughts, you're not broken. You're just in a place your mind hasn't mapped yet. Kafka didn't write to solve life. He wrote to name its edges, to say, this is what it feels like to see too much and move too little, to think without grounding, to suffer without clarity. And sometimes, naming it is enough, not to fix it, but to face it. So the next time your thoughts spiral, pause and ask, is this despair, or is it depth that hasn't found its shape yet? Because the mind can do both. It can imprison, or it can liberate. It depends on what you do with the awareness. Kafka once wrote, "A belief is like a guillotine, just as heavy, just as light. And maybe that's the truth of the intelligent life. The weight never disappears, but you can learn how to carry it without letting it sever your will to act. You don't need to escape the maze. You just need to stop walking it alone. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, share and subscribe. Until next time, stay curious, stay mindful and never stop exploring. We'll see you again in Mantis Library.